my name is Maggie Alsop. I am a minister of Word and Sacrament, serving as the Synod Equipping Moderator for the Synod of the Son. We wanted to bring this short video to you to give you some updates from General Assembly. This past year, leading up to General Assembly, the Synod sponsored General Assembly Commissioner Training, and it's our hope that this video that you're about to watch will be helpful in your discernment as these issues arise at your presbytery as they come for a vote.
Hi, my name is Tim Gray. I am a minister of Word and Sacrament serving at University Presbyterian Church in El Paso, Texas. I served as commissioner to General Assembly this year for Tres Rios Presbytery, and I also got to serve on the Rules of Discipline Committee. As such, I've been asked to go ahead and put together a report on the items that are being brought to you for consideration for your vote this year that come from that committee. I'm going to go ahead and move through these items as they are listed in front of me, which goes from ROD-02 all the way through to ROD-07. First, with ROD-02, this is a change in the time limits for bringing a case to a commission for at least for investigation. And we were initially asked to remove the entire paragraph, the entire section that talked about any sort of time limits. We decided to change this to just changing the word committed to discovered so that the item would read, now, no written allegation shall be filed later than 5 years from the time the alleged offense was discovered. What this allowed us to do was a compromise between various different groups. But one of the larger reasons that we did want to make this change and why we asked and why we recommended this change to General Assembly was that while the time limit section does allow for an exception for cases of sexual abuse of another person, this did not change, that time limit exception is not there for any other types of abuse. And so we thought that was not necessarily a fair analogy there, a fair use of that time limit. We agreed with the groups that were bringing that overture to us. So we changed that from committed to discovered, and that is what you are being asked to consider in approving after General Assembly has approved that recommendation. Next item is ROD-03. This is a complete revision of the rules of discipline, which would now be called church discipline. There are a lot of reasons of why this change was brought to General Assembly. But the biggest was that General Assembly asked the Rules of Discipline Task Force to actually rewrite this entire section. The section is now far more streamlined. It goes in order of how things would work in a case. And the language is far more understandable. There are very, very specific changes here and there, but for the most part, the item that was brought in ROD-03, the changes that were brought in ROD-03 were for that streamlining and making things far more understandable. I should probably note that all the changes that we did in the rest of the overtures, we voted to approve to bring over into this newly changed section. Moving on to ROD-04. This is changing D-100303 and D-100302 regarding accused rights to be notified. This merely changes the process so that if a commission were to go ahead and not bring charges initially, as it stands right now, the process is that the person or individual who brought the initial inquiry would be the only person that is notified that this is not being followed through for. This change brings that notification to be both with the person who brought the inquiry and the person who was accused. We feel like this was a good change as it brings about more transparency to the process. Moving on to ROD 5, that's a change to D-3.0106 regarding renunciation of jurisdiction. The language as it shows right now says that as soon as the person renounces jurisdiction in a process, during a process, that this ends the judicial process. And what we heard from various groups was that when this happens, that a lot of the information goes away, the investigation and bringing in more information into that process all stops. And this has been used to delay justice, delay process for those who have been wronged, those who have, particularly for those who have been abused in various ways. So the recommendation is that we change the language so that the judicial process does not end, but instead information continues to be gathered, and that it is reported on and is put into files that then can be used later if jurisdiction is brought back into play. For ROD-06, this is on amending G-10503, G-10550, and G-30105. And what this does is allows and places into our government section the appropriateness for calling a congregational meeting in receiving a report from a disciplinary action. ROD-07 is a recommendation that changes G-40301, and we went back and forth with this process, this language change a lot. The language that initially came to us was pretty much required pastors took precedence over any local requirement to report, and this created some issues constitutionally and legally in terms of who was giving us that information. So the end result, the language that we finally recommended to the assembly, and then the language that was eventually approved by the assembly, what it does is it doesn't change any legal responsibility for a pastor. So if you are in a place where you are required to report on abuse, then you will still be under that jurisdiction. If you are in a place where you are required to maintain confidentiality, you still have to maintain your interaction with those laws. But what this does is push more, lifts up more of our responsibility as leaders in the church to make sure that we are caring for those who come to us in confidentiality, but also even more so that we lift up the care and compassion in reporting on ongoing abuse where that is happening. So that is the reasoning for this change, and we also recommend approving that. Thank you for receiving this report, and I ask for God's Holy Spirit to be upon us all as we consider these changes, and also the many, many other changes that came from General Assembly this year. Thank you, and God bless.